Hi everyone, welcome to a walkthrough on talking to your child or your learners about air and trees. Air, I think, can sometimes be a little bit of a more challenging concept, particularly for some of our younger learners to grasp because it's not something tangible. So when we're talking about air, there's a few things that we can do to try to really bring our learners' attention to what the air is. One of my favorite things to do is take a deep breath. So this is a little bit about mindfulness. It's a little bit about breath work. And ultimately, it's just being conscious of our bodies. So when we take a nice big deep breath in, what do we notice? What do we feel in our chests? You feel your lungs expanding because air is filling your lungs. And I think that's a great way to sometimes start talking about air. Ultimately, even if we can't touch it, use our other senses to discover air. For example, smell. Go into a nice forest and sniff the air, or go by the sea and do the same. Have your learners start to pay attention to the different smells in the air. You can also perhaps talk about, how do you see air? How do we see it? Do you see branches moving in the wind? What else? How else can we see air? Sometimes if it's really windy, maybe sand will get picked up or dirt will get picked up in the air, so it actually can be cloudy. Or what about a fire? It puts a darker smoke into the air, but the smoke is still air. What about the northern lights or the sunset? Talking about why the air that we see changes colors. What else? And so touch. Touch is a little bit harder, but this is where we can have some fun. In terms of balloons, fill a balloon with air. What's in that balloon? Sure, you can touch the balloon itself, but you can also feel that there's something in the balloon. It's air. The same thing goes for bubbles. Bubbles are great fun, and it helps learners to understand air. What about tasting air? Can we taste air? Maybe. It's linked to our sense of smell. So maybe that's a good question to ask your learners. Can they taste air? How can they taste it? Have them run around with their tongues out. Tell me if they can taste air. So when we talk about bubbles and we talk about balloons and we talk about the trees moving, this is all about understanding how air can move objects around. So it moves branches. If you blow on those balloons or on the bubbles, they move. That's all air. It's also paying attention to clouds. Why are the clouds moving? What makes the clouds move? Air. So that's a great way to start talking about how air can move objects. And sometimes it's also interesting to talk about some of the behaviors of the air around us, because air is what creates weather. And air is what lets birds fly. Air is what lets airplanes fly, for that matter. So, paying attention to birds as they soar on a nice hot sunny day. Or thinking about even making your own little paper airplane and giving that a throw and trying to understand why sometimes it flies further and sometimes it just falls flat. Air and learning about air is like magic for kids because we can't see it, but we know it exists, right? So even though it's easy for adults to accept and understand that air exists. Children are different. Young children need to see and feel the concrete. Explaining that air exists is just this abstract idea, since we can't see it. We know it exists, and that air takes up space. So everything we learn about air is about exemplifying how air takes up space, and also how we can identify air. So some of the things that we can talk about with air are that it's a mixture of gases. And this mixture of gases blankets the Earth 400 miles high, making up our atmosphere. And this atmosphere, our air, is actually what protects the Earth by absorbing radiation and reducing heat differences between night and day. It's also what allows life to flourish on our planet, on Mother Earth.